In a previous video, I showed you how useful this space above the garage door is because it has so much support that you can screw into to really make strong shelves. And today we're going to tackle the sides, which is basically the same thing, but it has some gotchas and a little more accuracy intensive, and we'll just get right to it. Now on the side walls, the 2x4s are like this. So you need to take your stud finder and measure both edges of that, mark them off, but then you need to measure out equal distances from both. So when you screw the board in here, you will have actually make a mark down the center, so you'll screw right into that middle piece, which takes a little more accuracy. And you may find that it's not efficient to cut a whole bunch of uniform boards to start with because the sides of the garage are not the same width. For this side, I only used 12-inch wide boards, and over here there's more space, so I use 16-inch deep boards. And you'll notice back here again that it supports a saw and a sander and stationary tools pretty well, and your lightweight cans of gas and oil and so forth. But when you come over here, when we're talking about 4 feet apart and 16 inches deep, that's a lot of weight to span across the board, and you can see how the plywood is buckling there. There's a couple of ways we can tackle that. One way to tackle that is to not use plywood at all for the shelf and just use several 2x4s or 2x6 or 2x12s for the shelves, and that'll give you a very stout shelf that's often used for industrial shelving. The other way is to screw in a 2x4 along the length of the bottom of the board to stiffen it. And there you can see with the same load, it's not bending or sagging at all with the additional support. Have you ever tried to stand on a ladder while holding an awkward heavy board, a screw gun, a screw, and a camera? Well, it doesn't have a happy ending. So what you do is lay out your board with the 2x4 and mark it off. Then go ahead and get all your screws started, and that way you have a lot less to juggle while you're up on the ladder. For the shelf supports, I was going to rip these 2x4s in half and make them 1x's, but 2x4s are pretty cheap and it's not worth the time and trouble and sawdust to split them down the middle, so we'll just use them as is. If you look closely at the bricks at the bottom of the garage, you'll notice they're about 3 bricks high there, and over here almost 4 bricks high. In other words, the garage is designed to slope downhill so the water will run out. So if you measure from the bottom of the floor for your shelves to make them level, they won't be level, but the shelves too will be slanted downhill. So instead, use a bubble level like this. Here's a boo-boo we can all learn from. Notice where the garage garage door rail is aligned with right in the middle of the shelf, which makes it hard to get larger things in and out of. I could still use it for smaller stuff. I may correct it later, but something to look out for. If your screws are long enough, you can save on screws by going through both shelf supports and into the other side. I also, as mentioned earlier, recommend using glue because the combination of screws and glue with the clamping power of the screws is just unbeatable. Finally, I wanted to talk about this wall over here where I have a little bit of everything. I have room for big and tall items on the top, 12-inch deep shelves. The second shelf can hold smaller things like spray cans, spray paint, WD-40, so forth. And then we have this wire shelf, which I'm not real crazy about, but it was already there, and it serves a purpose of being a lightweight shelf, and you can hang lamps on it, so there's no use undoing what's already done there. And then finally, on the bottom, about waist high or a little higher, I have this simple 2x12 hung with the traditional brackets, and I've drilled out 1.25 inch, I think, holes every foot or so that my grinder and things like that can run to the electrical cord. And before I close, I'll give you a look of that side. The top shelves above the garage was covered in the first video, and the shelves on the other side of the garage. So I hope you've learned something and get off the couch and start building.